Well, greetings, ladies and gentlemen. As promised, we are here to review Les Miserables, or Les Mis, if you want to be short, or if you want to be very... If you don't know how to speak a lot of French, which actually I don't. Uh, Les Miserables, which is what I'm hearing a lot of people call it, but hey, whatever. Yeah, roughly translated means the miserable, the poor, basically. But yes, the long-awaited, well, actually not long-awaited film version, because there's over 200 film adaptations of Les Mis, or Les Mis, I should say. Not all of them English. Probably the most well-known for recent times is the 1970s one, which was not a musical. This version is based on the Broadway play, which came about in the 80s, I believe. It was when they wrote the play, and it's been one of the longest-running plays on Broadway. Phenomenal to see. I have not seen the Broadway play, but you're getting that type of treatment if you come here. This is Broadway brought to the big screen, which we've seen before in Chicago and other such films. And a lot of people are saying this is the Oscar bait movie. This is the movie that maybe the Academy wants to become number one. And I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't disagree. I enjoyed this movie. Of course, if you didn't know what it was going to be going in, you might be, what the? They're singing. It's a musical. I don't think anyone went into this not knowing it was going to be a musical. However, I have not seen the entire play. I seen a couple of segments on YouTube. So, I wasn't expecting it to be 90% music. I've seen Broadway plays before. I've seen Kiss Me Kate on Broadway. I've seen Aida on Broadway. And they didn't have as much singing as Les Mis has. Which, my fault for not knowing that. After the first 10 minutes, you're like... Or for me, it was 15 minutes. It was they're really doing this. They're going to sing the entire movie. Interesting. But it worked. It worked for the play. Obviously, it worked for this as well. Really great performances. Now, they did something different than they've done with previous musicals. Apparently, most musicals out there, they have the actors sing their lines, and then they have them later come in and play the music back while they'd act it out. Here they did something different in that the audio was recorded live. And what that gives it an advantage of for the performances, it allows the actors to really play with the singing. Allows them to put more pauses in if they're doing some acting. Allows them to adjust and react better to how somebody else is singing. Because maybe they're doing something, maybe somebody is doing something, and this recording requires maybe, again, another pause, maybe a slightly different tone, better timing. It works a lot better. And I haven't seen that many musicals, to be honest with you. I've seen a few. Most of them are more like the animated Disney animated musicals, to be honest. I haven't seen Chicago and such. And a lot of the other musicals that I've seen are not really musicals. It's they play a pop song or something. I'm trying to remember the movie I remember thinking about, but I can't. Name's not coming. But regardless, it seemed to go really good here. I liked it. I liked the sound. The sound was very good. I liked everyone's performances. I think especially with more experienced film actors like Hugh Jackman and Russell Crowe and Anne Hathaway worked really good with them because they already are very experienced with working with film and can bring in the more subtle performances. However, I'm going to make a criticism here on Eddie Raymond, who plays Maurice, our, Cosette's love interest, He didn't do a bad job at all. I'm not saying he did a bad job. All I'm saying with my criticism is him is he was playing it more like he was doing the stage performance on Broadway or on the British equivalent. I forget. He was doing a live stage performance. He didn't seem to realize, oh, I've got to play it to this camera. It's going to be a lot closer. So if he's looking, the eyes are not necessarily on the camera as much when he's kind of supposed to be looking at the audience. His gestures were a little bit more somewhat broad-like, which is great for stage performance because you're playing to this big audience. We're not seeing you close up. Movie, we're seeing you very, very close up. We're getting the angles we want, and you could see from the more experienced film actors on here, they were doing that. They were not, when they were singing, they were acting as they would normally in a film. Eddie here was a little bit more acting like he was on stage. It's noticeable, but it's not a killer. And Samantha Barks, the same kind, not as bad, but a little bit of the same thing. She, of course, is a very experienced stage actor. She's actually played. She's done Les Mis on the stage. That's kind of how she actually landed this role, if I recall correctly, from the background info. This is why IMDb is so great. She see really one of her opponent. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Correct me if I am. But although I did like her performance in her role, but again, it's probably more for the writing. I mean, and again, both of those, it's not bad. It's just something I kind of noticed. And that just might be the way he sings, too. It might just be, some people can really act and sing at the same time, and people have a hard time doing more subtle performances while they're singing. And therefore, you're going to get a little bit of an awkward, it's going to seem like the character is a little bit more awkward in a movie like this where they're always singing, where 90% of the movie is done in song. Rounding out the course performances, Hugh Jackman, Russell Crowe. It would have been great to see Kurt Russell in Les Mis, wouldn't it? Very, very great. Excellent performances. Anne Hathaway, she wasn't in as much of the movie, I don't think. I want to know why it's because she's a name. I don't know why she's getting more of the top billing over Amanda Seyfried, because she's cassette. She has a lot of screen time. Although I think actually Sacha Baron Cohen and Helen Bonham Carter, especially Sacha Baron Cohen, in here a lot, but he seems like he's from a different version of Les Mis. It really seems like he's got a very different performance. Again, he's kind of the character, the comic relief. He is kind of the only really bad, scummy person in the entire movie, and I'll get into that in a second. But his goofiness and such, he really seems like he's from a different movie. Like, he just kind of wandered onto their set, kidnapped their, how do you pronounce his name again? Theringer? Something along those lines. It's like he kidnapped their version of whoever they had actor, and he decided to insert himself into this film. But him and Helen Bonham Carter were fine. Let's see. Anyone I leave out? That's pretty much the main cast. There's, of course, plenty of side characters on there. So pretty much all good performances around. Now to get into what I just talked about earlier about, Sacha Baron Cohen's character being kind of the only asshole character. It kind of goes to what Les Mis is about. Les Mis, the basic theme is of the misery the poor suffer, and how it's not their fault, and society's kind of crushing them, but this is a common theme. A lot of people touch on it. But this movie, it's interesting in that it doesn't blame anybody for it. It, of course, calls for us, as people, to act, to be good, to help the poor. But it doesn't blame neither the poor nor the rich for the plight. Probably most shown out here. Big example, of course, is with Javert and Jean Valjean. At the slight spoiler, but I think most people watching this have probably are either familiar with the original source material in the book or with the play at least. At some point, Javert is he gets assigned to infiltrate the revolutionaries, and gets caught. And they're going to execute him, and Hugh Jackman decides to intervene and free him, and even at that point, Javert's like, oh, I know what's going on here. You want me let go, and with the promise that I won't chase you down anymore. You're trying to make a deal. And, Jean Valjean replies, no, I hold no grudge against you, because throughout the entire movie, throughout his entire life, Javert has been hunting Jean Valjean for breaking parole, which I guess was a big serious crime back in the July monarchy, France. Was it July or was it June monarchy? This is basically the second French monarchy. But and he goes, no, I don't hold a grudge against you. You were just doing your duty. You did nothing wrong. He kind of makes it a very good point. I think that's part of the reason why it seems so strange how most writers seem like they have to give us a villain, and they have to make us a hypocritical villain and someone that all the problems have to be blamed on. Here we have a story that our main antagonist, Javert, is one. He's sincere. He's not a hypocrite. Yeah, pretty much up to the end. He's not a hypocrite. In fact, it's his fact that he will not break his main vow of upholding the law is why he eventually, literally goes insane. If you don't get the reference, he jumps into the Seine River, which I'll have to talk about that in a second. But you have, this character. He holds up to his principles. His principles aren't bad. He's a very strict law and order type. But we see as a human being, he has a motivation. He tells us a bit of his backstory, that he was born in a jail, and he made the determination that he was not going to be like the people in that jail. He was going to be a man of law and order. So it works. And at the end, even Jean Valjean then also points out, he's an antagonist to me, but I did something wrong. The law says if you break parole, you should be captured and go back to jail. He's only hunting me because I violate the law. He's not hunting because he personally doesn't like me. His desire to get me is because he failed in his duty to uphold the law. So that's kind of one of the reasons why most people, really as an antagonist, Javert a lot of people like him. He's understandable, and he's righteous. Also very interesting, there is a scene where they do touch on Javert's religious convictions. So we have where, obviously Jean Valjean is very, very religious. His conversion, he becomes basically what we call nowadays born again. He's a born-again Catholic, though. Which, by the way, this is one of the rare times where we have a bishop, and a Catholic bishop, and he's the good guy. He's a genuinely good person. A lot of movies will always, this is probably an overly tried trope of having, like, the Catholic clergy that's, again, hypocritical, villainous. But, even most movies, who knows, it depends on what you see. But even a lot of movies will still have a priest. Like, the local priest will still be a good guy. But it seems like whenever they bring a bishop, he's going to be an asshole, or he's going to be bad intent, or he's going to be too extremist, and will normally play up against the good local priest. Here we actually have a bishop, and the bishop's really nice and really is. Jean Valjean steals from him. The police catch him with his stolen goods. He goes, no, 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 officers. I gave him these things. In fact, here's these candles. You forgot these. You left in such a hurry. Which, sparks Jean Valjean's conversion that he needs to be righteous to God. So that's such a big part of his character. But then we see Russell Crowe is equally motivated by religious faith to uphold the law. And it's interesting how they're both using this same point. And it's not to show the point of both the book and the movie is not to kind of show, look at religion, it's silly. It's more to show that it's circumstances you really have to look at. It's not what's your ideology, maybe, per se. You don't want to blame people. Because think, we don't see, at least, I mean, I have not read the book. It was one of those, it's on the list. And the list is very long. It might be bumped up now on the list after reading this, or after watching the movie. But, at least in the movie here, and I'm assuming the play, there's no instances of, like, the rich oppressing. In fact, the only time we see the rich person screwing over somebody could be when Fantine, Anne Hathaway's character, gets fired from her job by the foreman, who is kind of just doing it because Hugh Jackman kind of said, sort this matter out. She and another girl were arguing with each other over something. And, Hugh Jackman and Jean Valjean is distracted because all of a sudden, after he's kind of thrown out his parole papers, and he's thrown out his parole papers, and he's decided to start a new life for himself, and he's become a factory owner and mayor. Javert shows up, and he knows Javert, or recognizes Javert from his time in prison. And so he becomes really distracted. He doesn't want to have to deal with the issue before that, so he just tells his foreman, sort this out. I've got to figure out what's going on up here, because maybe this guy's here to arrest me. Doesn't say that part, obviously. And so the foreman just kind of fires Fantine. And that causes her. And again, we see Jean Valjean. He didn't intend for that. He didn't intend for her to get fired. He kind of just wanted. We got the impression that he just really kind of wanted the foreman to just break the two up and go on. He didn't tell him to fire anybody. And he's later on, of course, he sees that his actions caused that. So that's about the closest we get. We don't see the rich outright oppressing. We see the only other really character from the upper ruling class is Maurice's uncle, who does not approve of Maurice's political activism. But we don't see him causing a problem. Or really oppressing anyone. And later on, he takes Maurice back in and such. So it's an interesting way to call it, in that you don't have to try to put it the us against them, I guess. It's more of a call to, like, hey, listen, people are miserable. And it's kind of what Jean Valjean is the example. Despite all the things that get thrown his way, he remains upright and righteous, and he continues seems to be living all right. First becoming a factory owner, and then when that world is smashed, he still is able to maintain kind of a middle class upbringing, or a middle class lifestyle. But he never gets into blaming, and I think that's an important aspect. That's more helpful, really. I think, even in our modern times, you get a lot of people who are either, screw the poor, screw them, cancel all social services, are, very much, viva, some of those Occupy guys are a little crazy. Like, burn down Wall Street! Meanwhile, this kind of the classic tale of the poor is this don't have hate and help out. Don't, again, one of the stories is be aware that your minor actions, again, with the whole example of Fantine, be aware that kind of some of your minor actions can bring about these circumstances. You didn't intend for somebody to be fired, but the way you've worded things or had things done results in somebody getting fired, and of course, Hugh Jackman takes that responsibility, even though it would be very easy to deny it, to deny that you're personally kind of responsible. And that's not to say you can't fire anyone or anything like that, but if that happens, it's repaired and fixed by, of course, being a very generous person, consistently helping people. Of course, it's also the original source material is such a heavy criticism of the July monarchy in France. Here, I want to double check and make sure I'm getting that right. It's the July monarchy, which is basically ruled from about 1830 to 1848. Before that, it was another faction of monarchy. This is basically after Napoleon was defeated. They, of course, reinstituted a French monarchy, although it was supposed to be more of a constitutional monarchy. Sorry. I think there was it? Nah, I'm getting all mixed up with my French. But anyway, this ruled, and it was, of course, a perilous time. It was not smooth sailing for France. There was, of course, heavy pressure from within. You had this weird balancing act where you had to, at the same time, you're supposed to be ruling as an absolute monarch. At the same time, you're trying to continue to hold the will of the people or the love of the people. It didn't last. And this takes place, however, I think a lot of people would be surprised because I think a lot of people, they see the French Revolution stuff and they're going to think it's the actual French Revolution, the one that overthrew Charles. Or not Charles, King Louis. But obviously this takes place much later. Actually, the book outright says that it starts from, what was it? Well, it actually starts right after the end of the French Revolution, after a new king is put. Yeah, the king is put on. There's a quick little paragraph that starts off going, "Hey, the king is now France is once again ruled by a king." All that fun stuff gives us the background, so it kind of really goes throughout that. And then, of course, we see what was actually at the time kind of a minor revolt. One that really failed to get widespread attention, although from my understanding it did spread. I think the movie here actually makes it look a little less than how it actually was. If I'm remembering correctly, I think the Dutch, was it either the Dutch or the Belgians? It might be the Belgians. Were kind of inspired by this particular revolt to kind of break away from France. Don't hold me to that, though. I'm really, as you probably hear, trying to recall this as I'm speaking. I don't have the Wikipedia page up. I still have the July monarchy up here, which surprisingly I'm not seeing much of a info about that. Weird. Bourbon Restoration, yada yada, and July monarchy. Anyway, so that's kind of the picturing of this. And in the original book, from my understanding, is also that there's a lot of anti-monarchism in there. And again, because when the book was written, that was a big element. You had, he was truly, there was still a lot of people that wanted monarchies. And a lot of the book was to kind of point out why, if the people were really ruling, things would probably run a little bit smoother. That's arguable, some people would say, but hey, I'm pro-democracy, so. So I think that pretty much wraps everything up. I suppose I can talk real quick. We give the historical background. Um, with all that said, I kind of felt at the end one other nitpick to have for the movie, and I'll grant you this is a nitpick, and for me it's just one of those things that it gets on my nerves with movies, is especially ones that take place historically. I like for them to tell the audience historically how this stuff pans out. Sometimes they don't in movies, and sometimes it's because they'll show a movie that takes place in World War II, and okay with that one, you don't, I suppose, even though I would prefer them to go, and the Nazis were defeated by 1945. Yeah, everyone kind of knows that, true. I just prefer them to put it because there's always idiots out there that don't end, because film's kind of eternal. And if you make a good film, which you should be aiming to, it's going to be seen well after. But here I really felt that the last scene in the book, or in the movie here, is actually supposed to be the 1948, or not 1948, 1848 revolution, which did overthrow the monarchy. It doesn't say that in the movie, but from watching some of the behind the scenes stuff that they were releasing to lead up, they were intending that to be the actual successful revolution years later, even though it has all the dead characters in it. It's not clear to the audience, and I'm dealing with an American audience here. We don't know shit about French history. We know the French Revolution, and what I mean by we know the French Revolution, we know it exists. We don't know what most Americans don't know what about. They just heard the name, the French Revolution. Maybe something about people getting guillotined. That's about it. Granted, you probably have a little bit of a better educated audience with this play, but still, you don't want to make presumptions about that. I get confused. I think that it would have really ended if they had the song, they're all singing, you fade to black, and then before it started showing the names, you had it fade up, in... Although, God, I'm trying to remember what the name of this particular revolt was called, and regardless, even though the ex-revolt of 18 whatever failed, 16 or whatever it was, probably 16 years later, the people of Paris did rise up, and France became a republic again. It would have been nice to end that, because you already had this kind of triumph that people standing at the barricades and all that. I think they just really should have added that last little paragraph in there. Would have been more for the audience to go, oh, they did eventually win. Okay, well, now I feel better. The action was surprisingly good. For a while, I was kind of wondering, okay, now that they're singing this entire thing through, how are they going to get to the actual revolt part? Is that going to be kind of sung? And the movie did kind of pause there when there was actually to shooting and kind of charging at the barricades and action was done. They didn't keep with the musical stuff. They kind of became a little bit more regular film-like. But that stuff didn't take a large portion of the movie up, and they were still kind of, once the shooting stopped, they kind of started to sing again. But that worked good. I think it would have been a little too ridiculous if they were singing as they're like loading up the guns and firing. Oh yes, and because I gotta talk about this. The one scene that really the one instance that really kind of takes you out of the film is when Javert commits suicide, and he jumps. When he hits this some sort of drainage system in the Seine River, it is the weirdest sound effect. Like you're expecting either this to be like a hit in the water, or a silence, or maybe a splash sound, but no, he hits this thing. It's like a sound. It's a squish sound when he hits, and it does make you go ugh. But I think unintentionally, the second thing you kind of do is you giggle a little bit, because it's such a weird sound effect to have right after that. You're like, ugh. Oh, they really did that. They probably would have been better with this keeping it silent or just show the splash. I mean, I guess they wanted to show clearly he died when he smacked into that thing. I mean, I guess Javert did. Ironically, I had a friend of mine. I knew Javert committed suicide in this by jumping into a river. A buddy of mine didn't, though. And so earlier, he looks at it as earlier. Javert has a solo song where he's walking around on the railings of his, it's either a church or his apartment. And my buddy looks over to me and he makes the sign of like pushing him. And I laugh because like, you have no idea what happens to him later on, do you? But I liked it. Cinematography was very good. I liked how they tried to, when we first meet Cosette, they try to somewhat recreate the famous engraving of Cosette that was released with the original version of the book. I thought that they would at least try to get like a really oversized room so it looks more like the original engraving. But no, it was good. See this movie. If you want to get cultured, see this movie. It's different. If you've watched or listened to my podcast, review podcasts here, I watch a lot of crap. I mean, I'm looking over at my not crap, but lowbrow. As I'm looking over here, I've got the Resident Evil movies. I kind of defend the Resident Evil movies at times. I don't argue that they're, high art. But even though I like that stuff, I can still enjoy Les Mis. In fact, if you don't like Les Mis, you don't have a soul, sir. Maybe you don't like the music, maybe you're not a musical person, but the story itself is timeless. And I will argue with that. If you're either... There's something wrong with you, boy, if you don't like at least a basic version of Les Mis. I mean, honestly, speaking at least as an American, you really can't hate this movie as either a liberal or a conservative. Because if you're a liberal, it's talking about the plight of the poor. You should be all over that stuff. And if you're a conservative, it is a very religious-based movie. It's a very Christian film. Very heavy with the Christian values. Almost all the characters, except for the one asshole character who's supposed to be not really likable, although he's treated as comic relief, are Christians. And really do a good job of espousing that. And they don't look like crazies. You understand, it goes into the nature of Jean Valjean's faith and all that stuff. So you can look at this from multiple ways, and it works. This is why this novel is an all-time classic, and why I really need to read it. Criticize me for not reading it. Fine. Though I can only read so much. And I've now gone on for a half hour. The movie is it's 2.5 hours long, and man, I'm going to get really used to these really long films because... Just saw The Hobbit. Now I saw Les Mis. The next movie I plan on seeing is going to be Django Unchained. And that'll have to be sometime later this week. If it was just me, I'd just go see it tomorrow. But going up to some relatives up near Scranton tomorrow, that's an all-day trip. I won't be back till the following day. I might see that. I might see Django on the 28th when I get back. It depends on how early I get back. If not, maybe Saturday. And then I also got my second job. I have to work on both New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So that'll be fun. And then after that, the time for indulging and the time for having to diet comes back. I've put on weight and I need to lose it big time. And it's kind of like I waited till after the holiday season because it's the holiday season, and especially in my house, there's just too much food to resist. But see, I got a new running vest for night so I don't get hit by cars because people around here are crazy. So hopefully I'll get back into my running regime and drop this weight and just not eat crap again. But yeah, so Django Unchained should be reviewed up. I might catch Jack Reacher at some point, and then after I see that, I will set up for the top best worst movies and my year in review. Um, there will probably be some other reviews coming out. Uh, Maybe another book review, some game reviews. Uh, Again, the only problem I don't do with game reviews is, I've got Dishonored and Call of Duty Black Ops 2 here for Christmas. Everyone's kind of reviewed those, and it takes me a while to finish them. Call of Duty, I'll be done with it in a short while. But I take my time with a lot of these movies, or with a lot of these games. That's the only problem why I don't really review games, is because I don't beat them quickly. I take my time with them. Plus to get the Steam sale going on right now, which is already picked up some stuff with Steam, so a lot of delays, and now I'm rambling on. This is not good. So we're gonna end it here. Stay tuned for the Django Unchained. Please subscribe. Please like, comment if you agree or you disagree. Although, please actually articulate a point and not just go horrible. Why? Explanation, sir. That's all I ask. Hasta luego. Signing off.